Well, things moving along, because we're back for another edition of North South. You with me?
Allegedly,
You're
yes.
not even looking? There
Oh,
you
wait.
go.
Oh, there you go. Hang
Okay.
on. Bang!
There.
There it is.
There we go.
I have to remember to go to my right. You have to
I've
remember.
been practicing that for about 3 hours. No, I
Well,
haven't.
and
Anyway,
it's like I'm left-handed, so I have to pull the crossover.
that's right. We had that conversation last time about
Yeah,
you being, left-handed.
I
Anyway,
know.
good to see you.
Good to be
Ryan
seen.
Payne, John Nelson.
So,
How,
what's on
how
your
are
mind,
things?
brother? I heard that there was this quarterback
No.
who was said that he
Mm-hmm.
was retiring.
Okay. I think
Then
I
his
remember that.
then his camp denies that he's retiring,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden, yeah, I'm retiring. So now my larger question here is this: when and this is probably going to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on our business here for
Yeah.
everybody who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they were eventually correct in their assessment. The folks at the Four Letter came out. They had two of their writers sit there and say, "Yes, he's retiring." Then the camp comes
Mm-hmm.
out and says, "Well, no, he's not. He's still deciding." And of course, when you've got 15 million of your 20 million in your signing bonus that's still on the table
Yeah.
and it's available to you at the end of the week, do you hold off until then or not? And I mean, this was one of those things where a lot of folks were catching a lot of flack for a lot of different reasons about holding information, putting information out there, then having it denied, and
Mm-hmm.
then possibly backtracking on source. I mean, this journalistically was a wild week when it came to covering
Yeah.
TB12.
No, it was. And when that report came out before the conference championship games on Sunday, I thought, Tom Brady, you don't have to announce that at that time before two really big football games to decide who's going to represent what conference in the Super Bowl. So I was taken aback by that. I thought that's not the right timing. I have an issue with so many athletes that do that because we've seen a bunch of them do it over time.
Mhm.
The announcement, the timing of it before, because let's face it, everybody was focusing in on, or they hoped they were, the Rams and the Niners and the Chiefs and the Bengals.
Right.
And then when this news came out, no, we're going to put that aside and focus in on Tom Brady. You and I have been in this business a long time, and it's about checking at least three sources or having at least
Yes.
four, whatever it is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the gun was jumped, and you're right. Eventually, the news was going to come out, and I fully expected as well, even before this was leaked back on the weekend, that he was going to make some sort of announcement this week. He didn't want to leave Tampa in limbo.
Right.
He didn't want to, just take his time. He made up his mind, I think, during that last 30 seconds or whatever the game, last minute. He was going into the game, I think, against the Rams, that was going to be the last one if they lost. Obviously, not the last one if they won because they play in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So how he went out was interesting. And then the official news comes out as he announces that he just doesn't want to physically, do that again for a whole grind of an NFL season. Totally get it.
Yeah.
The fact he played till 44, the fact he played 22 seasons is, John,
Deal,
astonishing.
deal with the devil. Deal,
Yeah,
period, with,
yeah,
devil, period.
yeah.
I mean, that's the only way, but I give him a lot of credit for having the do you think he's actually gonna have maybe a cheeseburger now or something?
No, he's not. He's gonna he's gonna look better. He's gonna be in better shape when he's not playing football next year. Because he's gonna, him and Giselle, they've got whatever the nutrition program that they're
That's
on.
why I
And
was asking. It's like, okay, so is he gonna have a cheeseburger to splurge? "Hey, I've retired," and there's this big, you know he goes to Subway and gets the BMT
knowing
instead of
knowing
with the
yeah,
avocado in it.
knowing him, he only will if he gets a commercial out of it. But
That
outside of
means
that,
that means it's gotta be a Subway. There's gotta be a
it's
Subway
got to
somewhere,
be.
right?
Yeah, got to be a Subway. Greatest quarterback of all time, John, hands down. And lost in this sometimes for me through the championships that he won with New England, most of them, than the one he won last year with Tampa.
Yeah.
All the records, the touchdowns, the passing yards, MVPs, all this to Deflategate, all this type of stuff. Lost in this sometimes for me is I need to be reminded that when he was at Michigan, he had to work his way
Mhm.
to become the number one guy. Because I think Brian Greasy, right, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken,
Brian Griese.
he was the number one in Michigan, and he had to work his way. And I was watching, this was maybe last year, some package of Brady with some of the comeback wins for Michigan in one of those years he was with them. And he didn't change his game at all. He's the same quarterback. Now, not as agile. He doesn't run out of the pocket
I
like
was
he
gonna
used
say,
to
wait a
before.
minute, he was never the most agile dude.
Right. So not like he was kind of like Joe Montana. I think he's Joe Montana 2.0. I really do. Very similar in the way that they played, but I just give him credit for coming into Michigan and doing what he did. And also, when Drew Bledsoe went down at that horrific injury
Yeah.
against the Jets, he came in, and the rest, as they say, is history. He was given a chance, and people will like him and they will not like him. Don't don't hate him because he's good at what he does. Don't hate him because of him winning championships. An excellent quarterback, made everybody around him better. Tough to deal with probably at times, but that's what happens in sports. But hats off to him and Hall of Fame career.
And this was the other thing that was bugging me when the announcement came out. You had sports media, Bird Media.
Mm.
They went on the little Birdie website, and they were saying all of the kitschy things that you would see. I'll give you an example. Let me see if I can find it really quickly, since I know this will make incredible television. Uh, WTOP, as an example, in Washington, D.C., when they announced the retirement, I want to get the wording correct.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically, here we go. Okay, WTOP radio, WTOP News in D.C. Tampa Bay quarterback Tom Brady, who lost to the Washington football team during the regular season this year, officially announces his retirement after 22 seasons and 7 Super Bowl wins. And I believe WNBC in in New York did the same thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady, who lost to one of the New York football teams this season. It's like they all took the same template,
Yep.
and it's like officially
And
announces his retirement. Tom Brady, who lost in our market for whatever reason,
yeah.
officially announces his retirement. And for me, I mean, that really gives me no imagination whatsoever with your social media team. And I remember that when we started in television, when I started, especially back in the days of black and white TV back in the 1950s, when someone of Tom Brady's stature retires, and we work for an all sports network, you break in, you cover it, you go wall to wall with it, you get all the analysis, you get
Mm-hmm.
everybody lined up into it, and
Mm-hmm.
all you're saying are the positive things. You're reflecting on positives when we're talking about a career, like we did on the show this week. Instead, nowadays, with the little bird media, what you're trying to do in 280 characters is sit there and come up with a pithy comment, try to come up with the punchline, and try to act like
Yep.
you're cute with an idea instead of celebrating the guy. You sit there and you try to get in your shot on his way out the door, and it's disappointing that folks want to do that on the little bird these days, specifically
Yep.
because 280 characters to take a shot, and some folks were taking a shot. And honestly, if you flipped what they were saying, all you have to say is, Tom Brady beat your club. He beat your team more often than not.
Mm.
And now you don't have to deal with him anymore because he's retired. Otherwise, you'd probably lose to him more often than not if he was still
Right.
playing. And so you got folks taking shots on the little Bluebird media today as a part of it when Tom Brady retired.
Always take shots. It's easy to do that on
Yeah.
social media, right?
Easier to tear down than it is to
I know.
build up and appreciate
And
something for what it is.
and there's too much of the teardown. Yeah. And you know what? What you just said, appreciate. And I think that for all of us who were witness to Brady, um, any fan that was on an opposing team that he faced that lost,
Yeah.
you have to appreciate what this guy did. And I was also thinking about this too the other day. Brady had a tough year. And what I mean by that is not statistically. I mean, he probably played statistically the best that he's played in a very long time.
Absolutely crazy, and I still won my fantasy football league by not having Tom Brady as my quarterback.
So the numbers were through the roof.
Mhm.
But it was a tough season. You know, the Antonio Brown situation,
Yeah.
Chris Godwin with the injury. There were a lot of factors that happened to him. And I wonder if some of that played into his decision to retire. I
Which
wonder if he was physically and mentally maybe more mentally spent this season
yeah.
than he has been before. And maybe that played a bit of factor. Not saying that if he did not retire and he was going to play again next season, that things would happen the same way they did this past season. But I'm just saying, I think for him, when you're a quarterback, when you're the leader of that team, and when you give Antonio Brown, we talked about this when it happened, when you give him your house,
Mm-hmm.
when you give him your house,
Mm-hmm.
and he does that, not directly to you, but he did that to the entire football world.
Yeah.
That would not sit well with me. I'm not saying that he retired because of Antonio Brown, but I think maybe, John, this was a tough season outside of all the stats.
Do you want to go through all of the rigmarole and all of the mental preparation and all of the physical preparation? Do you want to go through it again at the age
Yeah,
of 44, heading into 45? That's a
yeah,
big question for someone who has spent half of his life in the Shield
right,
playing quarterback.
right.
And the question now is twofold. What does Tampa Bay do for their starting quarterback situation? Because I don't think it's going to be Blaine Gabbert, Russell Wilson on line one.
Mm-hmm.
And, what does Tampa look like? Because, I mean, you saw what Tom Brady was able to do with all of these weapons and having to reimagine what your weapons were looking like. Does Rob Gronkowski come back since
No,
his guy isn't coming back? Is Gronk out the door again?
I was just going to say to you that the next one to hang him up is Gronkowski, because he said he was spoken to last week, and he said that if he had to make the decision when he was doing that interview, hands down he'd hang up the cleats. He was done. So he was waiting, and I'm convinced that he was waiting on Brady. They knew what was going to happen, and you're going to hear Gronk at some point soon. Hang him up too.
What's on your mind for your lead this week?
That was pretty much. Oh, by the way, here's a skill testing question.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So Matt Stafford and Joe Burrow, right? Going to go at it in the Super Bowl. We'll talk
Certainly.
about that next week.
Right.
It's only the second time that two number one overall picks, a quarterback, will be facing each other in a Super Bowl. Do you know what the only other time was?
Oh, goodness.
I'll
I would
give you. I'll
I
give you a
would
hint.
say
Go
Doug
ahead.
Williams of the Washington Redskins, but I can't think of the other one.
Peyton Manning
Okay.
and Cam Newton,
Oh, okay.
Super Bowl 50 in 2016.
All
Anyway,
right.
it's just interesting because so many quarterbacks are taken number one overall. And you think that at some point, not twice, that two number one picks have actually met
Not
in
a
the Super Bowl.
56
But
is not a good batting average, sir.
no, not at all. That was on my mind, the Super Bowl or Brady, etc. Another thing on my mind
Yeah.
is tennis. And we give appreciation to Tom Brady for what he did.
Yep.
We need to continue to give appreciation for Rafa Nadal
Mhm.
for what he continues to do at the age that he's doing it at. He takes home the major, sets the record. He just, I guess, received a pretty emotional message at some point from Roger Federer, who I think still, well, I don't know now. I've had Roger being up there as the greatest to ever play,
Yeah.
along with Serena, with all due respect to
Jim Ford,
Navratilova and Chris
John
Evert.
McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Connor, all those great players. But Nadal is just, to me, somebody who is what tennis should be. For the most part, he's always smiling. He's very friendly. You don't hear a lot about him off the court. Novak Djokovic. He is dedicated to his game. He's dedicated to his craft. He doesn't seem to take things for granted. And for someone who is that successful, and I say this for anybody who is so successful in their craft in sports, for them to be grounded, I don't know the guy. I don't. I'm sure there's certain things that we don't want, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, from what I've seen in my lifetime with him, one of the good people in tennis, and he has helped put tennis on the map. Not saying it was off the map years before he started, but he's helped put the men's game back on it.
And
Great job.
at the same time, what we've seen from Rafa Nadal is someone who understands his body and understands what age can do to it. You don't see him in every tournament. You don't see him going uber platinum on his frequent flyer miles
Right.
anymore. It's like he picks his surfaces, he
Yeah.
picks his results, he picks his tournaments where he knows he can succeed and he's not going to overextend himself. And I think that that's key that I think a lot of folks can learn from when you're looking at someone like a Rafa Nadal. You can sit there and say, okay, he's managing his body now. And he said, it's you're sitting, it's like, okay, I'll go this tournament, this tournament, this tournament, because this surface I work well on, this surface I work well on, this surface I work well on, and I won't be taxing my body all
Yep.
the way through a tournament that I could otherwise. Like if you're playing hard court, hard court, hard court, hard court, hard court, and
Yep.
then you have to go change your surface and do the French and Wimbledon and that. So I think that also it gives you a window into how you can be a star in your sport longer if you manage what you're doing and understand what you can do and what your limitations may be and you don't push yourself. I think that that's another reason why you got to see Rafa Nadal get to 21 is understanding his body, understanding the environment, and understanding what he can and necessarily can't do 24/7, 365 anymore.
First one to 21. I'm glad you mentioned the different surfaces as well, because I don't think we give these tennis players enough credit. It's a different game on clay than it is on at Wimbledon, than
Yeah.
it is on hard court. It's a different different game on grass, right? And yeah, give him a ton of credit because he's first one to 21, and it was Novak. You know Novak, John. Novak is just steamed.
Oh,
He
well,
is at.
darn.
He is
Darn
all right.
it.
I have something else in my mind if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, is it
Unless you do.
well, I do as well. Is it
Okay,
tennis
you go
related?
first. No, it's not. It's
Okay.
hockey related. So you
Okay,
go
well,
ahead.
I've got a hockey related one, so this way this will dovetail well. Uh,
Okay.
over the weekend,
Yeah.
it was Hockey Day in Canada, and
Mhm.
by the way, fantastic coverage by our friends at Sportsnet, going all the way across the
Yeah.
country and having all the individual games and what they did in Scarborough was fantastic, especially considering it was like negative 100 outside.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what they do, for those that aren't necessarily hockey fans north of the border, what the Canadian rights holder will do is try to extend coverage all day long and go game, 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 and have rivalries and what it represents to each part of the country and have it be a celebration of the sport. One of the games that was on the board involved the Edmonton Oilers. And the appearance of a particular player that you and I have been discussing,
Yeah.
and he got his first appearance with this club in this game, and it was sadly against the Montreal Canadiens, who we have also talked about a great deal,
Mhm.
and how they are not the Montreal Canadiens of the 2021 season. They are the Canadiens of the 21-22 season, and it is
Yeah.
markedly different. But first time out, we got to see Evander Kane integrate into the Edmonton offense and integrate into being a part of his new team. And right now, returns are one for one, at least on the hemispheric stage.
Mhm.
I still, though, have concerns long term, and I know that we're supposed to sit there and as he stated, give me a chance, let me, resurrect whatever. Evander Kane made his debut with the Edmonton Oilers for instant results. Of course, the sample size being Montreal this past weekend, that's not necessarily the hardest thing to knock off the table.
I said this on another show after Kane signed with Edmonton. Everybody pretty much knew it was going to happen. Just it was a matter of time last week before he did that. And I changed the name from Evander to Evasive Kane,
Sure,
because during his press conference, he was evasive.
of course,
And he is not, he was very calculated. He knew the questions, he knew what they were going to be, he knew the answers he was going to give. I saw Ken Holland, Evander Kane in the middle, and Dave Tippett. So
hmm
left to right, depending upon where you're sitting and watching. At the press conference, and Ken Holland said something like, "Oh, yep, Evander, yeah, going to make your debut tomorrow against Montreal." And then the camera goes into Dave Tippett, and I'm not saying Dave Tippett wasn't going to get him in the lineup, but it just seemed to me that Tippett was caught a tiny bit off guard.
yeah,
And I don't know if you saw the lines that Dave Tippett put together for that first game. You had Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent Hopkins, and Zach Cassian, I believe, on the third line.
mm,
Put Cassian and Nuge aside. Zach Hyman was not brought in with his salary to play in the third line.
No.
He was brought in to play with McDavid. Zach Hyman is a perfect complement to any stud in the NHL. He will go in the corners. He did so for Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. He does so for Connor McDavid. But I looked at that and I thought, what's he thinking now?
Mm-hmm.
Now Evander Kane's on the team. And I'm telling you, John, Edmonton's not making the postseason. I said this weeks ago to you, and I still believe they're not going to do it. Evander Kane is not the answer. And I want to know from him, what was the reason out of all the other ones that he came up with that he signed with Edmonton? I believe it was because he wants to sign a long-term deal. He expects to put up 15 goals perhaps and then sign a contract with somebody else and get playing time. Why wouldn't you want to go to a contender? Tampa Bay was in the mix. The Panthers were in the mix. Why wouldn't you want to go to a contender who is a lot closer to winning a Stanley Cup than you are in Edmonton? It's about the money. It's always been about the money to Kane. And I'm with you. I still have concerns long term.
I think that you're right on. I think that he's playing for a contract and an extended deal, not just what we're thinking about here.
Right.
Edmonton, as we know it right now, once again, courtesy of our friends at Puckpedia,
Mm-hmm.
$6 million over the cap right now. And you look at Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman signed at 5.5 all the way through 2028. Evander Kane signed, and it looks like his deal is a little over $2 million. And it looks like it also has a no movement clause or a limited movement clause in there. So you're signing him for a $2 million, I guess, prorated for the remainder of the schedule. And
here's the thing.
Yeah. Sure.
Sorry, just to chime in.
Yeah.
He's had problems everywhere he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He had problems in Winnipeg. Remember the whole Dustin Byfuglien thing,
Absolutely.
and one of many.
Yeah.
He had problems in San Jose. He had problems in Buffalo. Every place he's been, there's been problems. And when he goes up and says at the press conference, people can think what they want, all this type of stuff. I think I'm a leader. I think I'm a good teammate. Yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then why does this garbage follow you everywhere you go? Anyway.
Unless you're leading by example of how not to do something.
That's exactly what he's doing.
That to me might be what we're looking at here. And we mentioned the cap problems, buyouts, James Neal, Sekera, Milan Lucic, and you still have to have money retained. It's about $4 million retained. Kyle Turris was buried with his salary at $525 for this season. Long-term injury. Mike Smith at 2.2. He's on long-term.
That was a massive mistake.
And right now you've got Koskinen at 4.5. So basically twice what you're paying Mike Smith. Stuart Skinner is your second goalie at $750. Also at long-term, Clefbaum at 4 and a 6. Tyson Berry's on IR at 4.5.
Yeah.
And Josh Archibald is on long-term at 1.5. It's and this seems to me, we had this discussion about Montreal. We've had this discussion now with Edmonton, that it seems that you've spent all this money on all of these resources, and it just so happens with these two clubs that your catastrophes have happened with the folks who are making the most money that are under your cap. I don't know if that's karma or kismet or whatever, or just rotten luck, but with these two teams who played last weekend, your long-terms and your IRs are the ones that are killing your cap right now.
Yeah, they're killing it. And Edmonton is not going to go anywhere with Kane. They're not going to go anywhere without a goaltender. And that contract to Mike Smith, he had a good season last year. That's fine. End of story. But I believe that the mistake was made with that contract.
At 39 years old, he's making 2.2, and he has another year after this one. So he'll be 40 years old.
I know.
Making 2.2 in the National Hockey League.
It just tells you, though, that he was also playing for a contract. He put up good numbers, and they thought that he would be fine. It's not happening. I'm sorry. Not a lot of goaltenders get to 39 and 40 and remain injury-free. Look at Carey Price, not even 39 and 40, and he's dealing with injuries.
Yeah. So what was your NHL topic, sir?
The Discover NHL Fountain Face-Off.
Oh, yeah. I saw
part of the All-Star
still of that, yeah.
skills competition. So in case people don't know, here it is. It'll be staged at the fountains of the Bellagio. You ready for this?
Yeah, hit me.
This kind of reminds me of when they were going to have the NFL draft in Vegas, right? Remember yeah, anyway.
The
Uh,
gondola takes you over
yeah,
across
yeah,
the water from one
yeah,
place A to place B, yeah.
yeah. So 8 participants will travel by boat to a rink in the fountain, John. There's a rink in the fountain.
Why not?
They must shoot pucks successfully and as quickly as possible
And then
into
not
5
fall into the pond.
into 5 targets placed in the water. And this is, I'm reading this like, quote,
Mhm.
fighting through the spray of the nearby fountains.
My guess is
Qualifying players
oh, man.
move to the head-to-head final. Listen,
Why not?
I'm I'm I understand it's Vegas.
Oh,
I
yeah,
get it.
yeah.
I've had an issue with the skills competition, some competitions within the competition
Yeah.
at the NHL All-Star Weekend. I love the fastest skater. I like that. The accuracy shooting, hardest shot.
Love the integration of the best women's players of
Yep,
the game.
love it. The breakaway, the one-on-one, I don't like it. What got me was when remember Alex Ovechkin a few years back when he put like a wig or a cape or something. I can't remember what he did.
I believe he put a mullet on head and tried to do things that way, yes.
You see, Ovi, one-on-one
Yeah.
live with
Like
Alex
the
Ovechkin.
Russian machine never break, and you know this.
I know you're going to try to get fans, but that put me off. That put me off. And this, I don't know if I'm going to be looking at that event out of all the events. It's all for show. I know All-Star games are for show.
Vegas show.
I
I
know.
mean, who knew? Now did I see correctly, as we're now hitting CFL territory in the 3-minute warning, did I see correctly that the target shot is going to be that it's gonna look like a deck of cards at 4 by 13, and you're gonna try to hit certain cards in order? Did I see that as a part of it too?
Probably. I don't know offhand, but I would
I saw
not be
this one
surprised.
I saw another still that was attached to the tournament where end of the weekend where, yeah, I knew about the pond shot,
Yeah.
but I saw like this deck of cards. It looked like 4 by 13, and it looked like the targets, instead of being on the individual corners of the net, it looks like targets were in the deck of cards that was elevated above the ice surface.
Yeah, it's going to happen. And I'll tell you, whoever's going to win will have to pull off the best magic tricks out of anybody.
Well, I mean, especially considering if you've got to do like the two of clubs and it's upper left, but it's not in the absolute corner. I mean,
Yeah.
this might be like 500 in darts. It's like where you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out, hey, how do I get to 21? And you hit like certain cards that are floating above you, and it's like, all right, so there's 10 and there's an ace and there's 21. I mean, there are so many possibilities. I'm willing to suspend belief
Okay.
for the skills competition in Vegas because you can't quite do that in other places. You can't quite do what they're doing in Vegas in Columbus, Ohio.
No,
You
you
can't quite
can't.
do it. You can't do the same thing at PPG unless you're wearing like one of those metal hard hats and you're trying to be
Yes.
melting on the ice at PPG if it's in Pittsburgh. I'm
Here's
willing to suspend belief in Vegas.
here's a question. I wonder what John Tortorella thinks of that.
Oh, maybe Brooksy should ask him.
Hey, Brooksy. Hey, Brooksy.
Oh
Anyway,
my god, that'd be
yeah,
awesome.
that's it. That's all I got.
But the one thing,
It'll be fun.
I know it'll be fun. I'm
Find a way
suspending,
to enjoy it. Find a
but
way
the
to enjoy
one thing that I will still maintain
it.
is that they screwed up. The National Hockey League screwed up the write-in vote. They screwed up the fan vote for the last one
Yeah.
because of what happened with John Scott. And I will tell you, this week, after last week's show, I went back onto the YouTube and looked at the John Scott elements in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was some of the most fun that the
Yeah.
players themselves had. And that when you had an everyman like John Scott work his way into that weekend, I thought it was the most fun that you could have in a situation.
I agree. And they wanted him to have fun. They wanted him to fit in, right? He's not an all-star, but he had a great all-star weekend that weekend. We're done. We're out of time. Next week we'll talk Super Bowl, I believe.
I've heard of that.
For John, I'm Ryan, north south. Thanks for watching and listening.